We will be talking tonight about the Savage Pigs of Tulla. It has been very difficult to film here. This is our third attempt. We have encountered every kind of a disruption. Strange noises in the night. We have even had these abnormal gigantic bugs the size of my thumb flying around us trying to disrupt our filming. Because there is someone out there who doesn't want you to know. They are always watching. This story starts with a man we will call Farmer. The farmer needed to sell his pigs to make enough money for his supplies for the winter time. His wife warned him he needed to make sure he got a good price for those pigs. So off he went to Limerick Market, and he had very little success. Because he had skinny little pigs. He had very scrawny pigs, and the man was mocked. He was mocked for the scrawny animals. They were compared with greyhounds. He was losing confidence as the morning drew on at the market. But something interesting happened. There was a lot of people in the huddle whispering about a gentleman down by the docks who performed miracles. He would perform any kind of a miracle you wished. He always sent a messenger into town, into Limerick City, to find the person who needed a deal. And sure enough, as soon as the farmer heard this conversation, he felt a tap on his shoulder, turned around, and there was a little boy telling him he was wanted down at the docks. Now, there was a little bit of fear with some people. They thought that, oh my God, this man is some sort of supernatural. Other people thought he was a criminal. And then even others thought he was some sort of monster. The farmer didn't necessarily believe all of that. But he was a curious man, and he felt very confident in himself. So, of course, he marched himself down to the docks to see what was what. Let's get into it. As the farmer marched down to the dock, he was thinking to himself, he was far more afraid of his wife than of some man who promised fantastical solutions. So he went down. He was not sure if this man was legitimate. I mean, what kind of a man can solve your problem in an instant like that? There must be some sort of catch. And sure enough, there was. The mysterious stranger proposed a deal. He would fatten up this man's pigs to the point where he could get any price he wished for them in exchange for the man's bones. The farmer's bones were the payment. Now, this sent a chill down the farmer's spine, and he thought for a moment, and he said, no, we need to include a condition on this. He said, you can't have my bones until I'm dead, and you can't have a hand in my debt. The stranger thought for a moment, and then he gave out a sigh, and he said, right, fair enough, let's shake on it. The farmer still did not quite believe that this was possible. He was not sold on the idea that this man would still be able to accomplish such a feat. But he said, I'll entertain him. The stranger told the farmer, I want you to walk down the docks and come back again. Okay? And when you're back, your pigs will be big fat sows. So off he went, and as he was off in the distance, the farmer couldn't resist taking a quick peek back. And what he saw was the stranger leant down over his sickly thin animals, and he was feeding them something from his hand. Now, the farmer didn't see what he was feeding them, but when he came back, those pigs were gigantic. They were the largest pigs he had ever seen. So immediately he thought, this is a scam. This is a hoax. These are pigs he's stolen from elsewhere, and he's going to land me in trouble for it. Or he's going to claim he's caught a thief. He's going to have me walk up the road with them, and then he'll get some sort of reward. He wasn't buying it. But then the stranger smiled at these accusations and told him, take a closer look. Take a closer look at these animals. And so, on closer inspection, he recognized Sue and George. And Sue was noticeable because even in this enlarged state, Sue still had a signature long black lock which fell over her eyes. George, of course, had a large white stain on his coat under his chin in the shape of a croissant. The farmer was delighted with these big fat sows he had before him now. He had beautiful big fat pigs. Thrilled, he returned to the market and everyone was throwing prices. He did not notice a small little shirtless man who wandered about whispering about where the pigs came from, where the deal was made. As soon as people heard that the stranger was the person who had performed such a miracle, they all very quickly withdrew their offers. And the farmer didn't even mind, because he was confident that he will take them to the next market somewhere else in Clare or Limerick and he would get the price he demanded. So he went home and he knew his wife would be thrilled anyway, because he had spent nothing and he was gaining these beautiful pigs, and he would even be home early. Now it did start to rain, and so the man pulled in for shelter at a tavern. And wow, did people marvel at these marvellous pigs. They thought they were fantastic. Now the man was going to head home, but there was an enormous amount of buzz around the tavern, because there was an anonymous donor earlier in the day who had bought all the drink in the bar, so it was a free bar for whoever came by. Our farmer did get shit-faced, and he did get drunk. So the farmer finished up his drink. There was nothing left in the bar. He got himself back very unsteadily onto his horse, up onto the cart, and off they trot. As soon as they're around the corner, out of sight of passers-by, they hit a huge bump in the road, and the poor farmer is thrown back into the cart, back in with the pigs. There is this god-awful sound, screaming, yelling. The horse is traumatized by the sounds, and he immediately starts to run. He knows the way home, and he tears off down the road, terrified by what's happening behind him. The horse did not stop running until it was back in the yard. It was early morning. The sun was not yet up in the sky. It was still black, and the farmer's wife, she was waiting with a pan in her hand to batter her husband. She could not believe he was so late again. She was furious, and she marched out when she saw the horse and cart arrive. Now, as soon as she got out there, she didn't see anyone in the driver's seat, so she moved around to the back and she looked in. All she could see was the outline of two enormous pigs. But she was shocked to see these huge animals, and she figured, oh, my husband must have done something now. I hope he didn't steal them. She marched on down the road, but she saw no sign of him. She saw no sign of her husband. She gathered the neighbors, she gathered everyone she could find, because as time passed, she got more and more worried. How did the pigs get back? How did the horse get back? Eventually, somebody had the good sense in the daylight to go back to the poor animals and let them out of the pen. Now, as soon as they looked inside, in the light of day, they knew what happened. There was guts and blood and mess everywhere, and the two pigs wrapped up comfy as anything, bellies full with the poor farmer. The only bit left was his little finger. It wasn't long before the police arrived. Word was spreading like wildfire across the countryside. The farmer was eaten by pigs! The farmer was eaten by pigs! The police arrived, and they didn't know what to do. They wanted to arrest the pigs. The priest came thundering down the road. He took control of the situation. He said, "Stop! Stop now!" He told the police, "Go back to headquarters and get new instructions. Figure out if you're arresting these pigs or not." As soon as the police were out of sight, the priest ushered all of the community around him, and he said to those gathered, "You need to kill those pigs immediately, and you need to bring them up to Tulla Graveyard, and you need to bury them. We need to get this done immediately." And without another word, they set to work. Now that the work was finished, the priest gathered himself up and made his way down the hill to console the wife for the tragedy that had befallen her and her family. He went to check as well to make sure everything was taken and placed inside this cemetery. Nothing could be left. There could be no mistake. So he went back and he took a look around, and he noticed she had the finger, the last piece of her husband, something to remember him by. My God, he said. He ordered her to bring it back, bring it up here, and lay it to rest with the rest of his body. She did as she was told. She ran back up and she dug up the ground. It was still loose and soft, so she was able to dig a hole, a sizable hole, to place the finger inside. And there lay her husband, at peace and escaping finally from the horrors of the night before. Poor priest, as he's walking home after this very, very traumatic day, he spots a gentleman he trusts, John. This is a young lad now, and he beckons him over. The man walks him home, and as they're walking, the priest tells him, I must confide in you. This night, when the pigs were feasting on the farmer, a man came to me drunk out of his mind, but he was screaming that he'd witnessed a man on the road. The man on the road had stopped at a cart and he had been pulling something out of it. And when the moonlight shone down, he saw it was a human skull that this stranger had extracted from the cart. And then, hearing the story of the farmer with the pigs, the priest put two and two together, and he had known that there was something nefarious going on. He called upon some guidance, and we can't tell you where, but it was all to sort the situation as best he could. So, using the knowledge available to him, the priest had set about concealing and protecting the remains of the man on sacred ground from whatever evil he had made a deal with. Much time passed. John and the priest took turns as watchdogs, keeping an eye on the grave from time to time. And it's a grave that's just here. It remains here to this day. One day the priest was passing and he glanced in. He saw somebody huddled over, a shape huddled over the grave. They were digging and clawing at the earth. He came to investigate. It was the wife. It was the farmer's wife. Her hands and nails were broken and bloody as she scraped through the stone and the dirt. And he called to her, what are you doing? And she cackled this eerie sound. She tore to the back wall of the graveyard, and he pursued her. As he saw her running to the wall, he saw this figure, a stranger standing there. He did not enter the graveyard, but he kept his hand extended, waiting for her as she ran to him with the bloody finger of her husband. The priest ran after her, leaping over the stones, and he reached out, and just as he caught her, her hand extended, and it was just enough to pass over the boundary, and it was snapped. The finger was snapped straight out of her hand. The priest grabbed the wife and shook her. What did you do? What did you do? She seemed to be in a trance. He looked back to where the stranger had been. He was gone. The countryside was empty. There was no sign of any living thing outside the graveyard. You'll be wondering how the story ends. What was the stranger trying to do with these bones? What happened to the poor farmer's soul? What happened to the pigs? What happened to his wife? Well, all of this will be revealed as Balor takes you deeper into the other world. But for now, we'll leave you with a little information about the pigs. The villagers and the locals have reported hearing them calling from the grave, looking to emerge once more, screaming, wanting to get out, starving and looking to